Hello everyone and welcome to another Cut Rate Commander Precon Upgrade Guide, the series in which we take a look at Precon decks and bring them up to cut rate standards. My name is Grazzet and today we'll be looking at the Draconic Dissent Precon from Battle for Baldur's Gate and its face commander, Firkraag Cunning Instigator, which we'll be bringing up from its roughly $40 price point to an increased budget of $75 after upgrades. But before we continue, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this content and would like me to continue making more videos like this in the future. And if you're feeling particularly generous, consider buying me a coffee at the link in the description to keep me caffeinated as I work on more of these builds. Also, be sure to stick around until the end of the video to see what Precon Upgrade from Battle for Baldur's Gate we'll be covering next. So, with that out of the way, let's start by taking a look at the commander and playstyle. Firkraag Cunning Instigator is a 3/3 dragon with flying and haste that costs 3, a blue and a red with the following abilities. Whenever one or more dragons we control attack an opponent, goad target creature that player controls. Whenever a creature deals damage to one of our opponents, if that creature had to attack this combat, put a +1/+1 counter on Firkraag Cunning Instigator and draw a card. Taking a closer look at Firkraag's core stats, he possesses a somewhat high CMC, a very low stat block for his cost which is somewhat made up for by his flying and haste keywords, and a pair of abilities that turn all our dragons into on-demand goad, while also making him bigger and drawing us cards as we force our opponents to attack each other. Breaking down his first ability first, it simply tacks on an on-attack goad to any dragon we swing in with, including Firkraag himself, which, seeing as it has quite an extensive pool of powerful dragons to draw from, is a great form of soft removal and board disruption to provide them with. And, since the vast majority of dragons are both enormous and evasive, they should easily be able to swing over or crash through any pesky blockers to get that on-attack goad off fairly easily. This then leads nicely into Firkraag's second ability, which both grows him and draws us cards as creatures are forced to attack our opponents. Of course, this works wonders with his first ability, as goad is probably the most common form of forced combat, but there are a few other things to keep in mind with this ability as well. Firstly, this trigger isn't limited to just our opponent's creatures. So, if we have creatures that are compelled to attack or goaded, Firkraag will still get bigger and draw us cards as they connect. Also, this ability cares about each creature individually that's able to deal damage, making mass forced combat effects much more appealing. Since if they do not affect us, we can simply leave our big dragons up to block any incoming attacks, and if they do affect our creatures, we'll be drawing cards and making our commander bigger for each of our evasive dragons that's able to get through. So, with these abilities, it's clear that Firkraag is a dragon-themed goad commander that wants to get dragons on board quickly to swing into our opponents, forcing combat as quickly as possible to grow himself and draw cards. Which is why in this Precon upgrade, we'll be refining both the dragons we have at our disposal as well as our sources of forced combat to ensure Firkraag gets the most value for us as we force our opponents to beat the snot out of each other. On the Draconic side of things, the base build already has a very solid selection of dragons of all sizes right out of the box, but we'll be refining it even further to ensure our commander has plenty of evasive brethren at his disposal to continually keep our opponents attacking each other, while also tearing into our opponents' life totals ourselves with their impressive stat blocks and abilities. Similarly, the core build has no shortage of new and old forced combat effects outside of our dragons, so we'll focus on concentrating it down to its most optimal sources to supplement our dragons' built-in goad, and force our opponents to attack each other as often and as hard as possible. So let's sit back and relax while Firkraag turns the battlefield into his own private arena. Despite being a mighty red dragon, Firkraag has always preferred to have others do his dirty work for him, whether they were aware of it or not. After all, if the end results are the same, why put more effort into it than you have to? Still, it's best not to underestimate him just because he prefers not to get his claws dirty, since he's still a dragon after all, and if push comes to shove, he can still take on all comers. Just like a certain maternal family figure of yours is rumored to in a different sense. At least that's what he heard from that other planeswalker across the table, so you may want to take it up with them. So, now that we have a better understanding of the commander and playstyle, let's take a look at the cards we'll be keeping from the base build. Starting off with our kept creatures first, let's begin by going over the best selection of dragons the core build has to offer to work alongside our commander. Opening with our lower CMC dragons first, Sprite Dragon stays in since it's very cheap compared to the rest of its brethren, allowing it to hit the board early while still growing to decent size as we fling our other spells. Both Chaos Dragon and Territorial Hellkite keep their spots as well thanks to being overstatted dragons whose forced attacks actually benefit us alongside our commander to draw us cards. And Vengeful Ancestor also makes the cut by being both a dragon, a source of goad on its own, and a goad payoff, goading 2 creatures per attack and slowly whittling away our opponent's life totals as they're forced to attack each other. Moving on to the top-end dragons that carried over, both the legends Kaiga the Tide Star and Ryusei the Falling Star make it in due to their big evasive stat blocks and powerful death triggers that either steal our opponent's creatures or level the board while leaving our dragons untouched if they're destroyed. as does the artifact Dragonsteel Hellkite, which also is a sizable threat that we can make even deadlier thanks to its fire breathing, or instead use it to destroy our opponent's permanents every time it swings in if we have the mana to pump into it. Warmonger Hellkite also keeps its spot in this category, turning the field into a free-for-all as soon as it comes down to quickly power up our commander and draw us an insane amount of cards, while its targeted fire-breathing effect can more easily enable trades or pump damage as our opponents attack into each other. The damage-dealing dragons Dracoseth Maw of Flames and Thunder Dragon also make the cut, the former's massive evasive stat block and on-attack damage/burn making it quite useful to snipe out problematic utility creatures we need to get rid of immediately, or instead pile on the damage into our opponent's life totals, while the latter's mini-wipe on ETB that dodges our dragons is useful to level the playing field if combat is getting a bit too chaotic even for us. And finally, Astral Dragon makes it in as our biggest dragon, coming in with 10/10 worth of evasive stats thanks to the dragon tokens it creates, and ranging from useful to absolutely insane depending on what permanents those tokens are copies of, making it a powerful top-end dragon with a respectable amount of utility. Then moving on to non-dragon goad-focused creature carryovers, we'll be keeping both Bothersome Quasit and Sly Instigator as solid forms of repeatable goad that also allow our opponents to attack each other more easily by preventing blocks and granting evasion respectively. The higher CMC Death Kiss and Geode Rager also keep their spots, the former's enemy power doubling effect making it easier for our opponents to pile on the damage into each other, and its instant speed goad thanks to Monstrosity helping us goad normally difficult targets such as vehicles, while the latter's AoE goad on landfall makes it an excellent way to compel multiple attacks each turn to make our commander bigger faster and draw us even more cards. Then we have a pair of non-goad forced combat creatures who manage to hold on to their spots, with Goblin Spymaster giving our opponents extra bodies and forcing them to alpha strike each turn, leaving them in the awkward position to either swing into our large dragons and likely lose their creatures, or choosing a different target instead and triggering our commander's growth and draw when doing so. And the enormous Avatar of Slaughter helping us close out games very quickly thanks to its AoE double strike granting and forced attacks, enabling our opponents to eliminate each other at double the pace, and empowering our dragons to perform even more devastating alpha strikes with their already impressive and evasive stat blocks. And finally, wrapping up our kept creatures, we have the ramp sources Burnished Heart and Solemn Simulacrum, both of which stay in to provide solid land-based ramp in our colors and helping us get to our commander and other high CMC dragons in a more timely manner. Proceeding to our instant keepers, the only one that carried over from the core build is Chaos Warp, which is a spectacular removal spell that's capable of dealing with a wide variety of threats, making it well worth running despite its somewhat random nature. Then moving on to our sorcery holdovers, the AoE goad sources Spectacular Showdown and Disrupt Decorum of course stay in as great sources of table-wide goad to get a whole lot of value out of our commander, as well as a respite from attacks the turn we cast them, while Blasphemous Act keeps its spot by giving us a potentially very cheap board wipe to reset the board if our dragons aren't enough to keep it under control. Enchantment carryovers are then up next, starting with the curses Curse of Opulence and Curse of Verbosity, both of which stay in despite not goading since they incentivize other players to attack each other for the ramp and draw respectively and also getting us value in the process, while Loot Dispute remains in for a similar reason, this time provoking attacks by introducing the initiative into the game and generating us value in the form of treasures and eventually additional dragons the more we get it back. Then we close out our enchantment keepers with Psychic Impetus and Shiny Impetus, both of which we can either cast on our opponent's creatures to compel them to attack, or our own creatures instead to buff them and still proc our commander. And the Akroan War, which is another one-side compelled attack that eventually clears the board of all tapped creatures, which should hopefully be everything our opponents were forced to attack with, making it a decent board wipe that we can easily play around by leaving our dragons on defense on the turn before that chapter resolves. Reaching our kept artifacts, it's going to be mainly mana sources most of the way down, with the Mana Rock's Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Felwar Stone, Izzet Signet, Mind Stone, and Talisman of Creativity, all keeping their spots since they provide us with cheap ramp to help speed up and fix our mana base to reach our commander and other high CMC dragons faster, with Dragon's Horde staying in as well as it also does this while generating us card advantage as we cast our dragon spells. Wayfarer's Bauble also stays in by providing us with excellent land-based ramp, which is hard to come by in our colors. And our last artifact holdover is Bloodthirsty Blade, which stays in thanks to being a cheap and repeatable source of targeted goad to help Firkraag grow and keep our hands nice and full by compelling attacks. Skipping over Planeswalkers since we won't be keeping any from the core build, we'll move straight to our kept land base, with Command Tower staying in as a reliable source of mana from our commander's color identity, Path of Ancestry keeping its spot by tapping for both our colors and also tacking on a free scry as we summon our dragons with its mana, Temple of Epiphany and Prismari Campus making the cut by tapping for both our colors and providing us with some scry to help smooth out our draws, and Myriad Landscape holding on to its spot thanks to the ramp it provides us access to from our land slot. The utility lands Reliquary Tower and Castle Vantris also make it into the final build, the former allowing us to draw cards off our commander with impunity without having to worry about discarding down to size, and the latter giving us access to some additional scry from the land slot in case we need to dig deeper into our deck for answers in the late game. And finally, 10 islands and 12 mountains make it in as our basics to round out our mana base. That leaves us with a final tally of 68 cards including basic lands we'll be keeping from the base build, leaving us with 32 cards to replace. So, now that we've covered all the cards that made the cut from the core build, let's move on to our upgrades. Starting off with our creature upgrades, we'll first be adding in some additional dragons to work alongside our commander, meaning we'll need to cut some non-dragon creatures and other spells to make room for them. Starting from our lowest CMC dragon upgrades and working our way up, we'll begin by cutting Agitator Ant and its subpar goad and counter distribution in favor of Pseudo Dragon, who's a cheap dragon to drop early, and whose ability to grant flying to any target allowing our opponents to more easily damage each other to grow our commander and draw us cards. Then we'll be swapping out Mocking Doppelganger, Baloth Beritril Entertainer, and Kazul Tyrant of the Cliffs, whose abilities to goad and screen attacks are solid but unable to reach their full potential in this build, and replacing them with Leyline Tyrant, Thunderbreak Regent, and Varix Bladewing, whose ramp, AoE damaging ward for our dragons, and possible extra dragon token will get us more value out of this dragon heavy build. The damage reflectors, Stuffy Doll and Brash Taunter will also get the axe here, as our opponents will likely be attacking each other more than us, in favor of Glorybringer and Skargan Hellkite, both of which can swing in as soon as they come down thanks to Haste and Riot respectively, while also giving us the option to use them as repeatable removal by either tapping them down for a turn, or forgoing their haste and pumping mana into them instead. The one-time wipes Curse of Swine and Aethergale will then be replaced by the repeatable removal and burn provided by Scourge of Valkus and the Zon Dragon's Legacy, giving us more dragons to work with and piling on the damage as our dragons come into play to help us close out games even faster. And as our last damage-dealing dragon upgrade, Angler Turtle and its effective but overcosted Force Combat will be replaced with Wrathful Red Dragon, whose ability to reflect the damage our dragons take to other targets, making it very difficult to block them properly, especially once life totals start getting low. Then changing gears from damage-dealing dragons to card-drawing ones, we'll be cutting Compulsive Research for the more dragon-flavored draw source Emerith Desert Storm, whose repeatable draw is nice if we don't have access to our commander and only gets better if we have little or no cards in hand, and Niv-Mizzet Perun, who is powerful but may be more at home in a more Spellslinger-focused build, will be swapped out in favor of Skyline Despot, who further incentivizes attacks by introducing the Monarch to the game, and we can easily sit on behind our wall of dragons to get even more dragons into play on top of draw if we want. And finally, as our last creature swap, we'll be exchanging Pursued Whale, who's a bit too mana hungry for its effect, and putting in the significantly cheaper Kumenu Battle Armor, which we can easily reconfigure onto one of our evasive dragons to upgrade their goad from a single creature to our opponent's entire board, while also adding a nice stat boost and additional evasion as a bonus. Moving on to our instant upgrades, we'll be adding in some additional removal by swapping out Domineering Will and Reigns of Power, whose creature control / swapping effects are a bit too niche for us to use properly here, and replacing them with Abrade and Spit Flame, whose flexibility and repeatability respectively make them much better fits for this build. Proceeding to our sorcery upgrades, the lone change we'll be making will be swapping out the Wipe Chain reaction for the better Wipe Vandal Blast, as it's better for us to blow out our opponent's artifacts rather than their creatures since our deck is all about combat control. Our enchantment upgrades are then up next, where we'll be removing Propaganda and Dissipation Field, both of which will find better homes in more Pillow Fort style builds, and adding in Popular Entertainer and Reconnaissance Mission, the former effectively doubling down on our commander's goad effect to allow our dragons to goad 2 creatures per attack, and the latter serving as a solid and repeatable draw source that takes advantage of all our dragons being evasive to keep our hands nice and full. Staying on the draw plan for a moment as we switch over to our artifact upgrades, we'll be axing the decidedly bad Temple of the False Gods for Bident of Thassa instead, which, like the previous entry, turns all our evasive dragons into draw sources, while also tacking on a cheap AoE forced attack to make our commander even more powerful and draw us even more cards. Some Mana Rock upgrades are then up next, with the mediocre land Ash Barrens and the middling rocks Midnight Clock and Hedron Archive all being swapped out for the more dragon-focused ramp sources Orb of Dragonkind, Lapis Orb of Dragonkind, and Carnelian Orb of Dragonkind, all of which are decent sources of ramp to get our dragons out as quickly as possible, while also being solid dragon payoffs to let us search for or grant haste or scry to our dragons respectively. Then to close out our artifact upgrades, we'll be taking out Artificer class, Clan Crafter, and Wilkenrith, all of which are spectacular cards but not particularly good in this build, and adding in Swiftfoot Boots, Lightning Greaves, and Whisper Silk Cloak in their place. whose ability to keep our commander protected from targeted removal being invaluable to keep our draw and goad engine intact, and their other ability to grant either haste or unblock ability to our dragons being a good way to get them into combat quickly and safely. Proceeding to our Planeswalker upgrades, the other partner walker, Rowan Kennerith, will be joining her brother in the cut pile, being replaced with the more dragon-focused Sarkhan the Masterless, who not only creates and turns into a dragon to proc our commander, but also passively prevents attacks from getting through by turning our dragons into a minefield that can destroy creatures before they even reach us. And finally, reaching our land upgrades, we'll be swapping out the tap lands Izzet Boilerworks and Wandering Fumarole for Frostboil Snarl and Shivan Reef, both of which come into play untapped to help speed up our mana base, and replacing Terrain Generator and its somewhat situational ramp for Haven of the Spirit Dragon, which fixes our mana to cast our dragons and can be used to recur one if needed. We'll also be swapping out the somewhat random inclusions of Desolate Lighthouse and Care Keep for Bonder's Enclave and Tyrite Sanctum, whose additional draw and means to protect our commander are significantly more useful than the card selection and token creation their predecessors provided. And lastly, we'll be exchanging 2 islands for 2 mountains to better fit with our more red-skewed color distribution. So, now that we've covered all 32 cards we've upgraded from the core build, let's take a look at the breakdown for this Precon upgrade. This deck currently has 32 creatures including the commander, 3 instants, 4 sorceries, 8 enchantments, 16 artifacts, 1 planeswalker, and 36 lands. Looking at the stats that matter to our game plan, we have 24 dragons and or sources of dragon tokens, 13 cards that care about dragons, 13 sources of goad, 5 cards that force combat outside of goad, and 4 cards that care about our opponents attacking each other whether compelled or otherwise, leaving us with a solid number of dragons to work alongside our commander and payoffs for them, additional ways to goad our opponents or otherwise force them to attack each other to proc our commander's growth and draw, and a handful of ways to facilitate or take advantage of our opponents attacking each other for even more value. For general deck stats, we have 18 ramp sources, 8 card draw sources, 11 targeted removal sources, and 6 board wipes. Our ramp being high due to the need to get our commander out as soon as possible, our wipes being somewhat high as well since a few of them are built into our dragons, our draw being a bit low since we're getting most of our draw out of our commander, and while our removal appears normal, it doesn't count our goad as removal, increasing to 24 if we do for a massive amount of creature removal. Looking at our mana curve, we have 4 1-drops, 13 2-drops, 15 3-drops, 12 4-drops, 8 5-drops, 6 6-drops, 3 7-drops, 2 8-drops, and 1 9-drop, giving us a somewhat heavy mid-weight curve that has plenty of cheap ramp to get our commander out quickly, hopefully getting him into play with additional dragons to start goading our opponent's creatures for value as soon as possible. The final price then comes out to be $75.02 after upgrades. This price does not include tax and assumes that the price you paid for the Precon was $40. The price of the cards was calculated by using the cheapest listed marketplace price on TCG Player at the time of this recording. For further upgrades, Manaform Hellkite is a relatively low CMC dragon that can create other temporary hasty dragons to swing in and goad creatures with. Atsushi the Blazing Sky is another low-cost dragon with powerful death triggers if it's dealt with. Scourge of the Throne provides us with additional combat phases to get even more damage and goad out of our dragons. An Ancient Silver Dragon can give us a possibly insane amount of draw with every swing. But our most impressive upgrade would have to be Ancient Copper Dragon, whose on-damage ramp of up to 20 treasures per swing works spectacularly with our commander to allow us to cast our spells as quickly as we can draw them, though the amount of treasure it generates will pale in comparison to the amount of cash we'll have to shell out to put it in our deck in the first place. Thanks everyone for sticking around until the end of the video. With Draconic Dissent covered, the next Precon upgrade we'll be covering will be Party Time and its face commander, Nalia de Arnis, so look forward to a party-themed build featuring her soon. Before we close out, again, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so already, as this channel cannot grow without your support. And if you feel like showing your thanks by keeping me caffeinated while I make these videos, please consider buying me a coffee at the link in the description. And if any of you would like to support the channel in a different way, feel free to check out the other deck text floating around my head if you'd like to see the latest builds, or click on the link above for a playlist of all the Cut Rate Commander episodes I've made so far. And with that, have a good one folks, and stay safe.